Good morning, folks. Welcome. Welcome, all my friends. Hope you guys are all doing awesome out there. How are you guys doing this beautiful Sunday? We're ready to rock. So, welcome to the Addicted to Gear live Sunday stream. You guys know the drill. We're basically here to enjoy about an hour's worth of gear talk together. Let me know if the volume levels are okay, guys, because I was messing around with them a little bit. I hope you could hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can. And please don't feel shy to jump in on the chat. You guys know how it works here. We are open platform. Basically, you guys could ask any questions you like. Jump into the chat. And, let's make the most of this hour together, guys. So how's everybody doing? I'm doing okay, considering. I don't know if you guys have been listening to the news, but we got quite a downpour this week, this Friday. I think because of the hurricanes that were going on in other parts of the world, we basically got really a lot of rain. So much so that they claim that we got like what we normally get in a year in one day. So that basically means lots of water, lots of people getting flooded. Thankfully, I didn't. But there was a whole bunch of areas around town with underpasses getting flooded, parking lots getting flooded. And I guess some people got some issues with flooding in their homes too. We lost power also on Sunday it went off on Sunday early evening. It only came back, Friday's early evening. It only came back on Saturday. I think it was like around noonish or something like that. So yeah, it was a little bit interesting. We ended up having to find ways of entertaining ourselves in the dark. But as long as you have an acoustic guitar, by your side, it's not the end of the world. We ended up doing other things as well. I had a few games of chess with my son. He whooped my ass again, like he usually does. And, had some family time together, which is never a bad thing. So how are you guys doing? I hope you guys had an excellent week. I know last week a lot of you were doing really well, and I was looking forward to a quick week. I like the weekends, but weekends are super busy. They're always jam-packed with events and things that we need to get done before we go back to work. So it's a good opportunity right now to clear our minds, get zen, and think guitars and gear. Leave all the other stuff behind. I want to start off with today's show reminding everybody that's new, please subscribe. You need to subscribe to be able to chat. So if we have any new people out there today, I want to hear from you guys. Don't lurk in the background. Just say hello. We're going to say hi to everybody here in a second. And I want to just start off by saying there was a big event that happened this week. Some very important event, and I want you guys to, if you guys know what it is, it was actually yesterday. If you guys know what it is, put it in the chat. I want to see if you guys pay attention to these things or not. Let's start off by saying hi to everybody here. I'll start in reverse order because usually I start from the people who come in right away and work my way backwards. I'll start my way from the bottom today. So I'll say hi to D-Mac. D-Mac says, I heard 500,000 people lost power. Toronto flooded last month, now Montreal. Which city next? The new weather can be brutal. Yeah. D-Mac, I think what we're really seeing here is the infrastructure of the city really deteriorating really quick. It never used to happen before. I mean, from time to time, yeah, but not as often as we're seeing it now. So I think the city really has to wake up and start moving. So John ZD351 is here. Rico is here as well. So Rico says Ian Anderson's 77th birthday. That's a good guess, and that was one of the events that happened this week. Ian Anderson is awesome. an excellent musician. I don't know if there's any Yes fans in the house, or are you guys into that that type of music or not? Good morning, Tony. Nice to see you. Tony has a beautiful icon on his avatar of a beautiful Shelby Cobra. My favorite. That's my favorite. Like, if I had only one car to choose, yes, I'd love to have a Ferrari. I'd love to have a Porsche. I'd love to have a Lamborghini. But I think my go-to, if I had only one choice, would end up being the Shelby Cobra. So, Tony, I love that picture. Sorry, I meant Gene. I'm a little baked this morning because of everything that happened this weekend. That's what I meant. Jethro Tull. Why did I say yes? I'm thinking of somebody else this morning. Thick as a brick. That's what I am today. And yes for yes, says Time Surfing Alien. Patrick is here. Good morning, Patrick. Nice to see you. Patrick's becoming a regular. Nice to see that. Gene is here. As I mentioned, Steven is here. Steven says, I'm scared now. New frets for a 12 string and a bunch of tools on the way, as well as Alexandra's newest release. So now he's got a lot of things in the pipeline, Steven. That's great. Looks like you're keeping really busy. I've never tried to refret a 12 string guitar. So that could be very interesting. Hopefully it'll end up turning out really great. And he says, now I fear my gear addiction will grow exponentially now that I have an income again. Well, that's great to hear, Steven. Good for you, dude. Nice to hear things turning around for you, man. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's going to happen. But that's a good thing. Gene says he loves being baked too. All right, that makes two of us, Gene. So I might be saying some funny things today. Let's see who else is here. JP is here. JP is correcting me on that one too. Yes, I stand corrected, JP. That's what I meant. Sorry. Again, brain fart this morning. Although Yes is also a very great band that I love a lot. So, and Tony says mine too. He really digs the Cobra, obviously, since he has the picture there. Let me just keep on scrolling down. I'm just going to say hi. Go a little bit further down the list here. So Time Surfing Alien says congratulations to Stephen. Dan Smith says lose power in New Hampshire every time the wind blows. Sad that I'm accustomed to it now. Well, at least you're prepared. You know, if it happens regularly, Dan, you usually end up taking steps to prepare for it. When it doesn't really happen all that often, we end up like not remembering where we put the flashlights, whether or not they have batteries in them. I just realized yesterday that, on Friday, that I don't have a transistor radio. That should be like, a must-have in an emergency kit. So all that kind of stuff, it's a good reminder to prepare. I agree with Wayne. When the end of the world comes, I can only hope I have an acoustic guitar by my side or two. Exactly, Well, you could still play an electric guitar even though you don't have power, but acoustic is better. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Hope your gigging is relenting a little bit, giving you a little bit more time to breathe. Paul Taylor's here. Who else? And Steven says, I hope you had a battery-operated pig nose on hand. I didn't. It's something else I got to add to my emergency list. Down in New Jersey's here as well. All right, so it looks like we have a good turnout today. So the event that I was talking about, let's see if anybody got it. I'm just going to scroll back down here and see what the latest. So what I was talking about, the event I was talking about, and that's why I got out the Strat, is because this week was Leo Fender's birthday. Leo Fender's birthday. That is a pretty important date, I gotta say. I believe Leo was born August 10th, 1909. So that would make Leo, if my math is correct, he would have been 115 years old. That's crazy when you think about it, isn't it? 115 years ago, the man was born. The man that started everything. Could you imagine how things would have turned out if Leo Fender never got into building guitars? I mean, the landscape of music history, you know, the music that we have, the artists that we have. What else? Just like, I could only imagine how different the lay of the land would have been. For me, I think it's interesting to note that Leo originally was like just fixing radios, I think, before he got into building like guitars. And it's interesting because he was never really like, he never really took courses. He didn't have any formal training as an electronics engineer or anything like that. He was basically a self-taught creative inventor. I think he initially worked as a radio repairman, because back in the day, remember, a lot of the radios that were out there were tubes, used tubes, which is not that unlike the amps that we have today, right? So if you know how to fix a radio using tubes, you could probably build a tube amp relatively easy. So I'm wondering, like, if he wasn't building guitars, like all the guitarists out there that we know and love, that basically embrace the Fender guitars, would have probably had to play something else. Could you imagine? Maybe we would have never heard of Eric Clapton or Jeff Beck or Steve Ray Vaughan or all the other guitarists out there that used Fender guitars back in the day. Will be interesting, an interesting evolution indeed. Imagine all the people that would be playing Fender guitars were forced to play something else and ended up playing a Gretsch or something like that. Could you imagine? Picture Stevie Ray Vaughan, or not even Stevie Ray Vaughan, never mind. Picture Jimi Hendrix being forced to play a Gretsch. I'm sure the music would have been completely different today. So anyways, I want to wish Leo a happy birthday. And keep it going, man. It was sad to see when he actually sold Fender to CBS, and he only stayed on a few years after the exchanged. You know, he sold the company. They usually keep you on for a while just to drink expensive coffee and say that Fender's still around, you know, just to ease the transition. But I think he only stayed there a little while after I think he started feeling the direction was changing from his original vision of what Fender should be, and he decided to leave, and then he started his own company. I think you remember G&L. I had a beautiful G&L Strat back in the day as well that I purchased. He started that, I think, in 1980, and with George Fullerton, and that's still around today. You know, they're still living the legacy, so it's pretty cool. A lot of spin-offs from Leo. So Patrick says, Tony, I traded last week my Squier Classic Vibe upgraded pickups for a Roland JC22 stereo amp, and he's so happy. What guitar are you playing through the amp now? The Jazz Chorus amps are cool. They have a really nice, unique sound. It's a great amp to have alongside, you know, a tube amp too, because you can get some really nice chorus sounds out of that if you're into cleans. Hey Shane, what's happening? Good evening to you too. Hope all is well on your side. Rico says Wiki says he started G&L in 1979. Well, around there, 1979, 1980. around there. John says, I think some other guitars would have evolved into something very Strat-like. There's nothing in the design that is just for looks. The shape is all about ergonomics. That's absolutely true. And Leo really just built the guitar to be like a player's platform. I don't think he made it to be like, you know, when you have a lot of, sometimes you have an instrument which is all design, all like, you know, flamboyant, but it's not very functional. I think Leo took the opposite approach. You know, his approach to building guitars was really to make it as economical as possible, and make everything, you know, do what it's supposed to. If he built in something into the design like a tummy tuck or arm carve or something like that, it was, you know, for practical purposes. It wasn't just for looks. Like the contoured body, you know, it was developed to solve practical issues. So I always thought that was pretty cool. And I don't know if guitars would have evolved into a Strat shape if it wasn't for Leo. I don't think it would have. I think it would have still gone a little bit more towards what we see on the classic guitars, other than the Strats, where they didn't have the contour cuts. This was pretty out there, these contour cuts. We didn't see anything like this before Fender, you know? So we probably would have had like more rounded, like Gibson style guitars. So it'd be interesting to see. Gene says, get the coffee book, 2000 guitars, and you'll see many killer shaped guitars from the 50s and the 60s. I have something similar to that over here too. It's a little history of guitar book, which has a lot of really nice guitars in there as well. Shane says, ergonomics are key. I used to have the BC Rich Warlock. The points hurt. Yeah, I agree. Sharp guitars are dangerous. Presley, what's happening, dude? Thank you for joining us. So Rico says, Tony, this week I traded for a Fender Bassman 007. Ever try one? Sounds awesome. I did, yes. The Bassmans are killer amps, but they're so loud. So I don't know how you're playing it. Are you playing it attenuated, or what are you doing to lower the volume on the Bassman? Because they're fantastic. If it's is it a four speaker Bassman? Because those were so loud, man. Sounds great when it's cranked though. Shane says Ted McCartney felt guitars should look like violins, hence the Les Paul. I mean, I guess every generation of guitar builders base their design over, you know, on the previous generation, you know. So yeah, I would see where Ted got his inspiration from violins. So Rico says 7 watts. Your Bassman is 7 watts only? Oh yeah, 007. Yeah, you mentioned it. Sorry, dude. So how do you like it? Give us some information on it, dude. The Bassman, I just want to see something here. Okay, so what you're saying, the reason why you threw me off, Rico, is because if it's the 7-watt version, it's the bass breaker, not the Bassman, right? Because I don't think Fender ever made a 7-watt Bassman amp. So if you're referring to the bass breaker, I have played those as well. I actually owned one. I have a review. I think I did a review on that one in my 700 plus videos. You should be able to find it there. Pretty cool amps. I like them. They have a nice sound overall, and they do allow you to get to the lower volume. So I was thinking Bassman. Bassmans are extremely loud. The only thing that I didn't necessarily like about the bass breaker line is that when you put it onto the drive channel, because they do have a couple of different versions, when you there's a drive switch there, and it ends up getting, you hear a little bit of that sizzly sound, you know, the static. I don't know if your amp does that as well. The one I had did that. That's the only disadvantage. I think it's just the way that Fender ends up designing their circuit to be able to get the drive. Let's see here. I'm just seeing if you guys have any other questions or comments, please type them in. Let me know what's going on this week. Cushman says that would have sucked. I love my Fender necks. Yeah, me too, man. And MFN says, regarding Leo Fender, I hope everyone has read The Birth of Loud, Great History of Leo and Les Paul and many others who gave us our gear. Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think even Marshall's in that. Steven says, I dumped my 9s, went back to 10s on my Les Paul and my 12 string. I don't think I could play 10s anymore. I think 9s are really where I'm comfortable. 10s for me, just a little bit too thick. I used to play crazy thick strings before, but I don't do that anymore. So this is... This is a Japanese Strat, and it's got an old set of pickups in here. They're actually not, the center is not reverse wound, so they're not noise canceling. So they are a little bit more noisy, but they do sound. I think they sound really good. I really don't know how much these Japanese guitars go for today. I bought this a long time ago and I kind of lost track with the going rates on these guitars. I believe this is probably, like, if I remember correctly, maybe like a 1990, 1993 made in Japan, 57 Sunburst 3-tone. So I'm not sure what the going rate on these would be today. I would have to check reverb or something just to see. But I think when I bought this guitar, if I remember correctly, I bought it for about, I think I bought it on eBay, and I think I paid $600 for it at that time. And I think they do have the original rosewood. The original rosewood fretboard, so there's no alternate woods being used in here, and it's really, to me, a great sounding, beautiful guitar, especially like the 3-tone on it. If you I like the fact that you can get it to, you know, the squawk. So if you have one or know what the price is on these, give me an idea. I'm wondering. It's I got to do some research and find out. Shane says, if it's Fujigen, it will probably go for slightly over 1,000 to 1,200 USD. I don't know how to tell if it would be a Fujigen. All I know is that originally it did have the made in Japan Made in Japan serial number here. And I don't know what it is with used guitars, but almost every guitar I end up buying, the previous owner has decided to take in sandpaper to it. And he got rid of the made in Japan in the back. I guess people don't like, you know, if it doesn't say made in US, they don't like it. So maybe that's the reason, or who knows what else. But I don't have a serial number, Shane. That's the problem. No more serial number on this guitar. It was sanded off. That's a dumb move, in my opinion. Because now I don't have any record of the serial number anywhere on this guitar, because it just appears on the back. So, unfortunately, not there anymore. I can look on Reverb and take a look and see if I can find something similar, but it's going to be a mystery for a while now. I think if I look on Reverb, I see a 1993 made in Japan Fender Stratocaster listed. Not exactly like mine. Similar in terms of condition. This is the 7.25 radius, just like mine. This is a 7.25. And they're asking $2,148 Canadian plus another $429 for shipping, which I find is a little crazy. Yeah, maybe there's a date code in the back, but it won't give me the serial number, Rico. So John says here in Australia, used Japanese Strats usually go for between 1,000 to 1,005, which is around what they charge here for a new made in Mexico Strat. Yeah, probably around there. Ben says the fact that the serial number isn't there anymore, does that take value away or no? Well, the only thing I can say is when there's no serial number, it's hard to sell a guitar, because people might assume the guitar is stolen. And that's maybe why people sanded off the serial number. But I mean, I don't really intend to sell this guitar because it's just too good. I just like it. And it's so like, you can push it, you know, you can drive it hard and it sounds good. You can play it soft, it sounds good. You can do the... You can do that. You can just lower them. And it sounds good. So, I don't think I'm ever going to sell this guitar. It hasn't budged at all in any way since I bought it. Never had any issues with it. The neck has been true and beautiful, and tuners, intonation, all that kind of stuff. It's been rock solid. So there's no reason for me to sell this guitar. I mean, the only issue, it's not really an issue, is the fact that, you know, Leo Fender designed the early guitars to have the truss rod adjustment over here, which is a little bit of a pain because every time you want to adjust the neck, you have to pop the neck off and do it that way. But to be honest with you, I rarely have to do it because the guitar is so rock solid. So it's not an issue at all. So John says he bought a Japanese 50 Strat last month, looked up the serial on the Fender website, says the guitar is a 60s Telecaster with a Bigsby. Interesting. So obviously something's not right there. Something's not kosher. I think you might have to do a little bit more research. How many of you own at least one Strat out there? Give me an eye if you have one. Eddie says that he has an E Series 1994 made in Japan Strat. It's a nice guitar. The E Series Japanese guitars were definitely great. Yeah, they were great in terms of collectability too. A lot of people know that the E series are the ones to look out for. And MFN says, Tony, 3 minutes ago I was ripping Long Train Running, then you popped off with it just now. Hey, we're on the same wavelength. My Logify says, it sounds like Red Hot Chili Peppers tone. Yeah, it's unmistakable when you have that single pickup sound. You really do get that tone, you know. A little bit of drive, not much. I like the squawk. So you just push it a little bit and you can already get into that Stevie Vaughan territory. So Mark says he's got one. Ben says he's got one. Wayne says, I have a bunch. Barry says yes. Jack says, I have 3. Vinny's World has one too. And Gene says, FRS HSS Strat in the house. My Logify says, Harley Benton ST62. So that's close enough. Wayne says, way more than 1. Well, I'm glad you guys, Farid said he's got 3. MFN says 1. Great, man. Patrick says, I don't have a Fender Strat, but I wouldn't mind to have a red one with EMGs. Yeah, like David Gilmour. Throwback to David. Mark says he's got a 89 Strat Plus. And Rexomatic says, Player Strat Roasted Maple Neck and a G&L Comanche. Yeah, I regret selling my G&L Strat that I had. It was also a 3-tone Sunburst, but it was a little bit more on the orange side. It was so nice. I never played the Comanche, but I really dig those pickups. So if you don't have a Strat, man, you got to add one to your arsenal. Good morning. OU812 is here. Nice to see you, man. Thank you for joining us. We're just talking Fender, Leo's birthday, and Strats for the people that are just jumping in on the chat. This is why I'm rocking my Strat here today. Rexomatic says, good morning. Heading back to Phoenix this week. Plan to stop by Music Villa in Bozeman, which is home of Gibson Acoustics. I got a tour factory some year back. Anyone have guitar road trips planned? I don't have any guitar road trips planned, but every time I do go somewhere that I haven't been before, I automatically scout out for any locations that might have some interesting guitars. When I went to Chicago last time, I wanted to go over and see Chicago's Music Exchange, but unfortunately they weren't open that day and I was busy the rest of the week, so I wasn't able to make it down, but I would have loved to have gone take a look there. They have some really interesting guitars available all the time. But maybe it's a good thing I didn't go, because maybe I would have caught the itch for something and then would have to rack my brain trying to find a way to get that back home on a plane. Not the easiest thing to do. So JP says, Tony, how many Fenders do you have? That depends, JP. Are you talking original Fenders? Are you talking like Fender Strats and Fender Telecasters? Only Stratocasters, only Telecasters? Fender style guitars, Squires, because you know they all fall into the Fender category, so you got to be a little bit more specific. D-Mac says, I got 3 Strats looking for a Ventura 60s for number 4. Nice round number. You can't have an oddball number for guitars. It's bad luck, D-Mac. Go for 4. That's what I would recommend. Hey guys, please give me a thumbs up before we forget. I think there's about 45 people here in the house. Would be nice to have 45 thumbs up. Or at least close to it. If you guys have a guitar on the way or something like that, I want to hear about it too. Cushman says, I have a dual humbucker Strat, love it. I have a couple of those Squier contemporary Strats that have humbuckers in them. 2 to be exact. I have a white one, or a pearl and a red. And with the humbuckers, they really do sound different. I wouldn't say that they sound like a Strat anymore, but it's a nice hybrid. That, you know, the Strat feel with the humbucker sound, pretty cool. The Nice says he's got a red Squier Strat. And Randy says 6+, not all Fender. And Eric Johnson Strat is on his bucket list, says Eddie. Some of the Strats out there that are artist series Strats, so the Eric Johnson, Eric Clapton, who else has them? Buddy Guy, I think they have a Buddy Guy version. Well, obviously Sierra Vaughan version. They have quite a few out there. I never really was that much into those guitars. Not because I don't think they're great. I don't know. I just can't really put my mind around paying so much for a signature series Strat. I'm sure they're great, but you know, like, they do have a lot of weight behind them. You know what I mean? If you show up somewhere with an SRV Strat, like, people are going to expect you to play Stevie's music. You know what I mean? Maybe not so much for other artists, but you know, it would be interesting. I think, you know, Jeff Beck also has one as well. There's quite a few. I can't keep up with all of them. Of course, they have the David Gilmour reproductions, all the special runs that they've done for the custom shop as well. Patrick says, Tony, a lot of Godin Strat style 90s on the market in Montreal this summer. I've noticed that too, Patrick. I don't know why. I don't know why people are dumping their Godin Strats. I'm not a big fan of the Godin Strat, to be honest, because I've seen it up close, and the body shape is different. It does feel different. I've never actually owned any Godin guitars. I've tried a couple, and they seem to be well built, but they're not my thing. So I know I'm missing out, considering I'm here in Quebec, the home of Godin. Basically, I should look at them a little bit closer. I always do keep my eye open on them for any new models to see if anything tickles my fancy. But for right now, haven't really pulled the trigger on any of them. D-Max said, I've been on a Telecaster search lately, but the Ventura Strat is the one that I keep thinking about. Dude, then it's a sign. Start with that. Start with the Ventura. I don't think that's a bad choice. And then see how it goes from there. Never say never, man. Nobody says you can't own a Telecaster and a Stratocaster. Unless your wife is telling you that. That's a different story. JP says total, all of them. I'm going to have to do some quick math. I had a list at one point. I think I shared with you guys, didn't I? Oh man, I don't know if I still have that paper around here somewhere. Probably do. I had done an inventory for my own sanity at one point, and I wrote it all down. But I don't remember if I still have it. Probably not. It's been a while. If I do, let me see here. I gotta do an inventory again, But off the top of my head, JP, I'm gonna say, well, too many. Let's see. I'm gonna say there's two. If they're just, you know, all of them Strat style guitars, just in this room, if they're Strat style guitars, I'm gonna say, well, there's two Strats. There's this one. I have my Road Worn Strat. Let's see. I have my Sir, but that's a Strat style guitar, but it's not a Strat. Obviously the EVH Striped is also a Strat style guitar, but it's not a Strat. I have the two Squier Contemporary guitars. Those are both Strat style guitars. I have another guitar which is a Strat style as well, plus another black. I'm gonna say probably 7, maybe 8. So if I put it in the in-between position, you get rid of the... If I put it in the middle position, it has a definite sharpness. These pickups do have a little sting to them. If you hit them hard, you can hear it. But if you put it in the neck position, it kind of have more of a rounder tone. But you don't lose the highs, you know? That's what I like about this guitar. It doesn't get muddy. Retains the high. Shane says, still gigging live, question mark. My friend complained that with the decline of the 4x10 cabs, all bands just sound like drums and vocals only. Agree. I still try to do gigs live as much as I can. Lately, I gotta be honest with you, the boys have been on hiatus this summer, and that usually happens during the summer break. We everybody goes their own separate ways and does the family thing, and then eventually we all get back together when the temperature starts changing, things start cooling down, we jump into fall, we get back on track, and we do the usual rehearsals and occasional gigs more regularly. But what the thing is, you're saying with the decline of 4x10 cabs, all bands just sound like drums and vocals. Are you saying that you don't hear the guitar as much these days? I gotta, for us, I gotta say it's pretty loud. I mean, I don't think you don't hear the guitars when we play, even though we don't necessarily all use 4x12 cabs. So you can still be loud even without using a 4x12 cab. But I get what you're saying. But I think today's music is more like, it's more geared to non-guitar. Like, if you listen to modern music, it's really just drums, bass, keyboards, singing, less guitar. You know what I mean? Overall, I think that's the trend right now. It doesn't mean that there's no guitar, but it's not like in your face as much. It depends on the artists that you're listening to. But I get what you're saying, Shane. Paul says, perfect Strat sound you have, fat but zero chime loss, totally love it. Yeah, the pickups that I have in this guitar are quite good. They're original Fender pickups that I actually upgraded the pickups that were originally in this guitar, and I went with the ones that were specifically not reverse wound in the middle position to retain that aspect of the sound, and I think they do a fantastic job. I'm okay with living with a little bit of hum or buzz as long as the sound sounds good. D-Max says, I'm a big fan of hardtail Strats, but is is a hardtail really a real Strat? Good question. I don't think it's not. Like, I honestly, almost all of my Strats don't have the trem bar on them. I rarely use the trem bar on my Strats. Sometimes I pop it on, but not that often. So basically they end up in a bag somewhere, and I don't use it all that much. So, if you go with a hardtail with string through body like that, I think they probably have a little bit more resonance to them because the strings are going through the body as opposed to going through the block and being attached to the body with the springs. I wouldn't say it's less of a Strat, but it's less common. I think most people end up buying Strats that have the floating, the floating bridge on them. A lot of people hardtail them. They just basically put a block in them so that you can't pull up on the bar or anything like that, So I'm not saying it's not a good choice, but it's less common. And probably if we're talking about like how many people would, if they had a choice between going through to a hardtail or a standard Strat, they would probably end up taking the standard Strat, just because I think it's a little bit more common and people are used to seeing that, So if you're trying to sell a guitar that's a Strat and one's a hardtail string through body and the other one's a traditional, you probably end up selling the traditional first. Does that make sense? We were talking about the influence that Leo Fender had on music. But recently there was an article online that was talking about the influence that other artists have on the music. And they were specifically talking about how if Slash had picked up a Strat or stuck with a BC Rich, Gibson would have taken a different turn. And him playing a Les Paul changed the course of the company, which is probably true, and it's interesting to note the whole symbiosis that we have between the makers of the instrument and the players of the instrument, and how those two evolve into, music, the music style, the music trends. It's interesting to see, like, how everything evolves. So it's true, if Slash hadn't, stuck with Gibson and if he continued playing a BC Rich, perhaps Gibson would not have, rebounded like they had during the time that they were kind of in a slump, and maybe would have decided to go a different course and maybe started making other types of guitars or investing in other types of guitar companies, which would have ultimately changed what we see in terms of where Gibson is today. It's a little bit, it's an interesting topic to think about, philosophical topic to think about, how, the past would have influenced what we have today, the present. But everything is connected, man. And I think it's true. Like, all of the icons that have come through in the past all influenced our music, our musical tastes, and our musical styles, what we end up playing through. If Hendrix would have popped up onto the scene and had been playing, like I mentioned earlier, a Gretsch and maybe a transistor type amplifier, I don't know if Marshall would have taken off the way it did, if Fender would have taken off the way it did. If Jimmy Page came on the scene and only played his Dan Electro, never picked up a Gibson Les Paul, never played through a Marshall stack, we'd be probably looking at other equipment today. I think you're right, Shane. I think Gibson would have probably, if not gone away, gotten a lot closer to disappearing. And I don't think they would have rebounded the way they did, where we see the prices of guitars, specifically Gibson guitars, getting more and more expensive every year. They would definitely have been cheaper because they would have been less popular, you know. I think a big portion of what Gibson is able to sell today is based on their legacy. The fact that they could, you know, release these signature limited edition series left and right, which they demand a hefty price for. They wouldn't be able to do that, you know, if the artists back then hadn't played Gibson. So they have a definite monetary advantage, you know, for the previous history, and they're working on selling that as much as they can. They're not going to let us forget, that's for sure. They're going to keep re-releasing the limited edition, you know, the reissues of whatever they can for as long as they can. It's the name of business. Dan of New Jersey says Buddy Holly kicked it off. That's true. It's true. A lot of the other guitar artists had originally caught the Fender bug when they saw Buddy Holly. Even the guys over in Britain. So Patrick says Kijiji Saint Adele USA Strat, same color as the one you have with a case, $1,100 Canadian. The only difference is it has a humbucker. Okay, well, I'm not sure if that's a reissue. It's probably not a reissue if it has a humbucker, that's for sure. This guitar is not routed for humbuckers. If you take off the pickguard, it's 3 single coil slots. There's no way to put a humbucker in here. It has to be a reissue. It has to have no truss rod at the top here. It's got to have the truss rod here. So it's not exactly the same. Rexomatic says, spent some time this summer watching YouTube videos and setting up my floating bridge. Some nice videos on using stacks of post-it notes to set appropriate height. Yeah, that's always, that's one of the tricks you can learn when you're starting to set up the guitar bridges. Some people use coins, some people use stacks of post-it notes, or, you know, popsicle sticks. Whatever you can stack to get it to sit at the right place is usually a good starting point, you know. But yeah, post-it notes is always a good tip because you can always, you know, thin it down or thicken it up however you need it. And John says, Britain, it was all about Hank Marvin and the Shadows, who had the first Strat in England. I remember a lot of guys like, who was it? Eric Clapton, I think, was mentioned that at one point. Jeff Beck mentioned that as well. There was quite a few artists that mentioned that. I think even Mark Knopfler at some point was talking about how, you know, they started seeing the American artists with these really cool Fender guitars back in the day, and, you know, they were very difficult, almost impossible to get in England. And then when the first, you know, few Strats ended up being sold in England, everybody was all over them. All these artists were trying to find them, or when they would tour and they would go to the US, they would buy them, bring them back to England, and vice versa with the Marshalls. You know, they weren't easy to get over in the States. Everybody was using the Fender amps back in the day until you know, people started to tour, and, you know, people like Hendrix ended up getting that, you know, the Marshall stack, and people started taking notice. So pretty interesting the way things evolved. My Logify says, I think my Harley Benton ST62 has also a big enough cavity for a humbucker to fit in it, even though it's a single coil. A lot of these guitars have that now. Even some of the Fender guitars, if you look at them, Fender used a couple of different routes under their bridges, under their not the bridges, but the pickguard. So they had, the original early ones were routed for single coils only, so the holes are basically quite small, 3 of them. Then at a certain point, I think when Fender was sold to CBS, they started doing what they called the swimming pool route, which was basically a big rectangular hole that you would be able to put any configuration of pickups. You were able to put single coils or single humbuckers. They would all fit. They weren't nice looking. I'm not a big fan of those. I just feel like they take out a big chunk of wood underneath the pickguard when they were doing that. Then they went back to the different combinations of single, single humbucker, or humbucker, humbucker, single. And then, of course, when they went back to the reissues, they went back to the single routes, you know. So you can tell a lot about a guitar, even if you don't have the serial number. You can tell a lot about when it was made just by looking at the routing. Stealth Parrot says, Tony, is the process of building a bass guitar the same as a regular 6-string guitar? Yeah, more or less. It's pretty much the same, just different scale. DMX says, Rory Gallagher is another great Strat player. Yes, we often forget about Rory. When we talk about great Strat players, we forget about Rory because I think he had a short run. A lot of people don't know the legacy that Rory left us, but he was an amazing guitarist as well. Gene says, I always like the wet sound of surf music and spaghetti westerns. Yeah, man. That's like, you know, quintessential Strat through a Princeton reverb with the reverb cranked up. You know, you can get that sound. The good, the bad, and the ugly type sound, you know. Love that sound. So Jean-Pierre says, which guitar was Chuck Berry using in the 50s? So Chuck Berry's known for his Gibson hollow body guitar. And, you know, we often see, often people will say that when you're playing a 335, a Gibson 335 is a Chuck Berry guitar, but it's not. And if you look carefully, I don't know if I think he had a couple of different ones. If I look back at the historical photos, he didn't always play one guitar, but he played a few. And I think he was probably, the early ones was the 305s. The one where you usually see him playing like Maybelline, stuff like that. Johnny B. Good. That's, I think, the early guitars that a lot of people associate with Chuck Berry. But he played a few different ones over his career. And I don't know what happened to Chuck Berry's guitar, to be honest. I think it's actually in a museum somewhere. If I Google it, I can probably find it. I think it's in the musical Crossroads exhibition at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I think that's where it is now. So Eddie says, I say most Strat players don't use the trem, so why doesn't Fender make more hardtail Strats? If it isn't broken, why mess with it, you know? I think the answer to that is quite simple. If you have a guitar that is able to do everything you want it to do, so if you don't want to use a trem, don't use it, and that doesn't change the tone in any way. And if you do want to use it, just pop the trem back on and away you go. So, you know, as opposed to if you have a hardtail Strat or string through body Strat, you can't use a trem ever, you know. So the fact that you have it there but maybe don't use it, it still gives you a more versatile guitar in case you want to use it, you know. That's probably the reason why they don't make more hardtail Strats. Good questions, guys. Keep them coming, please. I'm jumping around here just to see. Patrick says the Harley Benton Guitar Max model is available on Thoman's site. It comes at around $500 Canadian in fees. The thing that stops me from buying is that almost identical to my Fusion 3. Yeah, I don't think there's a big difference. I have one of those Fusion guitars too, Patrick. I mean, they're good guitars. They're solidly built guitars. They're not overly expensive, but you know that if you buy one of those guitars, eventually if you want to sell it, you're not going to really be able to make your money back on those guitars, Music and Gear just popped in. Hey, he says, sorry guys, busy morning. Here now. We were waiting for you to get started, Music and Gear, so let's start the show now. Just kidding, dude. Just kidding. I'm glad you're here, man. We appreciate you. DMAX says, favorite radius for Strats, 9.5 or 7.25? Good question. I think the more modern 9.25s are pretty popular now. I think most people have gotten comfortable with them. 7.25 is a little bit different, like this one is. And if you do a lot of bending, you might bend out. But as you can see, I can bend quite a bit without doing any fretting out. To fret out, I probably have to go like... Gotta go like way past the midpoint. Like I'm bending the string over the actual dots at this point, which you're probably not gonna do that often. So Stu Pop says, yeah, I'm late. I had to cut the lawn. So did I, man. I just didn't do it. So I'm here now. Shane says, I sold my Harley Benton for only $50 less for what I bought it for. Okay, but was it probably new, like relatively new? How long did you own it before you sold it? I think there was more of a Harley Benton buzz on those guitars. There was a lot of buzz around Harley Benton. It seems to have died down a little bit now. But if you only lost $50, that's pretty good, man. John says, am I the only person that prefers having an extra switch on the front of the guitar for a coil split rather than a pull pot? Where do you have this switch? Like here? Like in the front? Like over here? I don't like having too many doodads on my guitar. To be honest, I don't really even use a coil split all that much. But I prefer, if it's hidden and it's in the knob, it doesn't detract from the style of the guitar. I find when you have switches and stuff on the guitar, some people don't necessarily like that. So it's nicer to be stealth. There's a lot of options now for that kind of stuff. Fender also, puts push switches in the knobs of some of their guitars. Having the pull option is always good. But I'm not a big fan of having like too many switches and stuff on guitars. Keep it clean. Shane says he sold it after 2 months. So that's it. That's probably why he didn't lose that much money. It was practically brand new. Gene says the Rick Beato interview with Alan Parsons was a good one. Worth the watch. Yeah, I know. I'm going to have to catch that one. Eddie says, Tony, guys, I have a volume pot that is always on. Grounding wire loose, ? I haven't opened it up yet. Yeah, either maybe it's loose, but perhaps it just wasn't wired properly. Was your guitar modified recently, Eddie? Or just like this start happening all of a sudden? My bet is that there's something wonky happening with the wiring on the inside. Probably a very easy fix, by the way. Much better than when you don't have any sound coming through your volume pot. Shane says, my custom Sahana is the only guitar I have with a coil split. Yeah, I only have a couple guitars that have the coil split option. To be honest, I don't really like the coil split because I don't find it sounds good most of the time. Pickups have to really be designed to be able to, when split, have enough output to still keep it juicy. And I find a lot of the times they're just not designed that way and they sound weak. So I don't use it much. Dan of New Jersey says, I don't like coil splits. Never satisfying sound to me. I agree with you, Dan. Same here, man. Danielle says, anyone considering any of the Fender Player 2 guitar models? I think a lot of people like those models. I think they're pretty popular these days. I'm not considering one because I think I'm full up on Fenders for right now. Strats. Not really looking for another one. That's the beauty of, you know, getting your fill early. You're not necessarily enticed by the new stuff as much. So I'm not in the market for one, but maybe somebody else here can answer that for you. Music and Gear says 100% spot on, Tony. The push-pull looks stock and easy to use. Yeah, easy to use, exactly. It's like you're not hunting for a switch somewhere else. You know where it is. You just pull it up. Although some knobs are not as friendly in terms of being designed for pulling. Like some will slip on your fingers. You know what I mean? MFN says too many switches is why I don't have a Jazzmaster. I was never into that. Keep it clean, you know. Like when I play the Kramer Beretta Special, which has no switch, one knob, and that's it. Beautiful. All you need. I have one Gibson Les Paul that has all of the fancy switching. It came that way out of the factory, and it does all kinds of stuff. Rarely use it. The one that I use most of the time is, like Stu Pop mentioned, there's an option on that Gibson that if you pull out, I think it's one of the tone pots, it actually bypasses all of the switching and it's straight out. And I think that's the one, that's the actual option that sounds the best when you bypass all of the other circuit. You know, it's just straight out, straight pipe, as they call it. And I think it sounds the best. John says, usually a mini switch near the other switch or knobs. I can't hit it easy, then fumbling to pull up a knob without accidentally adjusting the tone. There is that. It's true. Like if you use the switch, use a knob to pull up to activate the split. Yeah, sometimes you will move the switch so you can, either change the volume or whatever on the guitar. I think it's better to maybe put it on a tone pot or something where people don't really notice if you slightly move the tone pot as much as the volume. Rico says, Tony, how do you usually sell your guitars? Craigslist, etc.? Where do you meet up for the sale? Local coffee shop or... Interesting question. Well, first of all, Rico, look around. I don't really sell that many guitars, as you can see, unfortunately. I think I have to start selling some more. I usually like to deal in person. I don't like to ship guitars as much. In the early days, I would shop and, sell stuff on eBay. But fees have gone up. It's a hassle. Sometimes you end up having issues when you ship stuff like that. I prefer to deal in person. I don't mind meeting up with somebody. It depends on where the person's located and all that kind of stuff. But if you're dealing in person, cash on demand, no hanky panky, it's usually the best way to go about it. Coffee shops are a little weird because you show up with a guitar in a coffee shop, people tend to look at you a little odd, if the buyer wants me to go over to his house, I can do that sometimes, but it all depends on where they're located. A lot of times people like to try the guitar before they do anything. It's always good to be able to play it through an amplifier and stuff like that. So, that's always a good option. Farid says, do you have stainless steel frets on any guitars? I've never tried them. What do you think of them? Yeah, I do have. I have my Sur guitar, my Standard Pro has steel frets on it, as well as one of my E-Art guitars as well. They play nice. The advantage of stainless steel is that they don't wear down as easy. However, they do have a sound to them. A lot of people don't realize it, but if you play your stainless steel frets and you just like slap the string, like sometimes when I play without a pick, what I'll do is I'll play without a pick, and what I'll do is I'll take the string and I kind of slap it against the fretboard, like kind of like a bassist does. When I do this, when you do that sound on stainless steel strings, frets, you get a little ping sound. It's a little like different sounding ping that the regular frets don't have. A lot of people don't realize it, but I do hear it. I wouldn't necessarily go out looking specifically for guitars with stainless steel frets on them. Like, to me, it wouldn't be something that I would have to have. I'm okay with regular frets. Just that stainless steel frets last a long time. But honestly, if you have a few guitars, like, you know, with the amount of guitars I've collected over the years, I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to wear any of the frets on any of my guitars down, because I don't play any one guitar enough. Because I'm always grabbing different guitars and playing a little here, a little there. So it would take me probably more than the rest of my life to be able to wear down the frets on my guitars for the amount of time that I spend playing each one. So it's really not an issue. It's just, you know, if you like them, then go for it. If you're a professional player and you're playing your guitars a lot, and you have maybe only one guitar or two guitars that you play most of the time, then it's a good investment, because I think overall they last longer. So you can go way longer between fret changes. My Logify says, Tony, will you come over to John's stream after your stream? It'll start soon. I don't know, man. I might. I'm not sure. I do have things I have to get done the rest of the day. I got to make some videos for you guys. Those videos don't record themselves. Maybe I'll drop in for a few minutes. I'm not sure. We'll see. Shane says, take a Fender Mustang Micro and you can test a guitar anywhere. Yeah, I do that with my NuX plug in there. You know, but it's just to find a place that doesn't look weird, like as if you're doing a drug deal, like in some parking lot out of somebody's trunk. You know what I mean? It's just awkward to do it that way. Dan of New Jersey says, looking at used amps. If I can't hear it in person, no deal. Absolutely. There's a lot more that can go down on an amp deal than a guitar. I mean, a guitar, most of the time, like visually, I can tell if the guitar is a dud, even before I touch it, just by looking at it. Sighting down the neck, looking at the frets, looking at the relief on the neck, you know, just feeling the knobs, feeling the switches, feeling the trem, seeing if there's any weird noises, tuners. I can probably get, you know, do 90% of the inspection on the guitar just by looking at it. But I wouldn't want to buy a guitar without playing it, because even though, you know, maybe there's something funny with the wiring, usually it's not a big deal, easy fix, but you still want to play it. You still want to make sure it stays in tune. You want to make sure there's no weird buzzing sounds or things like that. But an amplifier, man, there's a lot of stuff that could go down on an amplifier. You know, it might sound good for, you know, a few minutes, and then start, you know, producing some weird sounds, some weird sizzling, crackling sounds. If the tubes are no good, it can get overly hot. The speaker cones could be damaged. You can get cone cry. The reverb tank might not work. You can get crackly knobs. There's all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I would say buying a used amp, if you can't play it in person, think about it, man. Think long and hard. John says the standard thing here is to meet a local McDonald's or a car park. Though the last couple of times I've gone to people's houses to buy a guitar. I feel a little bit more confident when I'm going to someone's house to buy gear. I know people don't usually like people going to their homes, but you know, you could be pretty confident that if you go to somebody's house to buy a guitar or an amp, the guy's not trying to screw you, because he's not going to bring you over to his house, you know, if he's looking for trouble or if there's possible trouble on the horizon, because he knows you can easily go right back to his house and cause issues and know exactly where to find the guy, you know. So if the guy's trying to sell the guitar or amp through, you know, a parking lot deal or something like that, you have to be a little bit more vigilant, because, you know, there might be issues. Stuff might be stolen. You don't know. You know, there could be all kinds of things. These days, nothing surprises me anymore. Shane says, I'm going amp shopping tomorrow. What are you looking for, Shane? Let us know. Share the love. Eddie says, just like Tony said, I'll never wear out nickel frets, so it comes down to cost. Maybe I'm totally okay with nickel frets. Yeah, there's not an issue. The only thing I would say is that sometimes I have noticed in the past that when you buy a Chinese guitar, for whatever reason, like sometimes you'll buy a knockoff, maybe one of those, you know, Chipsons or something like that. The nickel that they're using on the frets is not very good quality. It's pretty bad. And those tend to wear really fast. Again, for me, it's still probably not an issue, because I probably wouldn't play the guitar long enough to worry about stuff like that, but for it to become an issue. But I have noticed that those type of frets really do wear down quickly. Music and Gear says, Tony, play an 88 PV Nitro, 10 years out playing, 1 ounce a week, 20 years of playing at home. Now it needs a refret. Nickel frets, they last a long time. They do. That's what I'm saying. Now, a lot of people, you know, automatically will jump to the conclusion that, you know, stainless steel frets do last longer. They do, but, you know, I haven't, in my whole lifetime of playing guitar, I've never worn down frets on any of my guitars to the point where I had to do a refret. So why would it start now? It wouldn't. It's just a question of feel, I guess, if you like it, you know. Ben says, does anybody else's chat page disappear every 15 to 20 minutes? That's weird. Hope not. Anybody else having that issue? Odd. So Shane's looking for a Fender clean amp. Shane, get yourself a Princeton. End the story. Next topic. Shane, you want clean, you want Fender, a Princeton is a good place to start. It depends if you're, you know, if you're honestly looking for a clean Fender sound. The Princetons are great. They're not too loud for home use. They're plenty loud, by the way. People think that they're not loud enough. They are. And you're going to get a really nice clean sound without going overboard. You know, if you want to get something that's not that expensive, I would stay away from the hot rods. They're not that great. Then you have to look at a deluxe, which is a lot more expensive. You know, just find yourself a used good Fender Princeton, and you'll be good. It's a great pedal platform too, by the way. I heard about Danielle. I heard of the police departments that allow people to meet in their parking lots to do deals, but I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable to be like, I've never actually been taken advantage of during a deal. I'm smart enough to know when somebody's not kosher, so I wouldn't put myself in danger like that. But I guess it would be a good thing. Shane's saying he's mostly thinking of getting a bass breaker again. We'll see what they have. Or a Roland. I mean, are you stuck on? Have you decided whether you want to go tube or transistor, Shane? If I had to choose again, I had a bass breaker in the past, and now that I have the Princeton that I built, I definitely stick with Princeton if I had to do it over again. Overall, it's just, I don't know how to describe it to you. It's just like, it's less cluttered, it's less nasally, it's more of a real Fender sound. Like, you can get very close to what you're getting in a deluxe with a Princeton if you tune it properly. Where I felt the bass breaker amps, although they're good, they're fun to play because they do give you the dirt channel. I'm sure you have pedals. You put a decent dirt pedal in front of your Princeton, I think you're going to get a better drive sound than what you'll get from the bass breaker with it. Stu Pop says the cost of a refret is more than a lot of guitars are worth. I would opt for stainless steel frets every time given the choice. Yeah, I mean, again, if you're going to be playing the guitar and you've had to deal with refrets in the past, yeah, I think you're getting more for your money with stainless steel frets. But again, if I found the guitar that I liked and it didn't have stainless steel frets, I'd still buy it. Yeah, Shane, test out the Princeton. I think you'll, for clean, it can't be beat. Be careful in terms of which speaker is in the Princeton, because lately they've put out a lot of Princetons with different types of speakers. The Jensen, the hemp cone ones, the Celestian versions. They sound quite a bit different depending on the type of speaker that's in the cabinet. So pay attention to that. And if you have an opportunity to try a couple of different ones with different speakers, then do that, because you'll definitely see that one will talk to you more than the others. Dan of New Jersey says, I love the cleans on the orange. Music and Gear says, I vote for the Fender Twin Reverb. Oh, home use, too loud. Dude, the Fender Twin Reverb's too loud for stadiums in some cases. Never mind. Great amp if you want to go deaf. Marcel says we have a police parking lot exchange in Longueuil. Shane says I already have a solid state, so I'm looking for tube. Yeah, I think get a tube amplifier, man. You need one. You need a tube amp. It's really the true sound. You know what I mean? It's going to make you feel, when you're playing a tube amp, it feels different. I don't have to explain it to you, Shane. I'm sure you know this already. But it's just, I definitely prefer tubes over transistor. If I'm going to do anything transistor, I'll leave it to my, FM9 or something like that. But I don't feel like I need to go out and buy a transistor amplifier anytime soon. Music and Gear says Blackface is fine, good amps. Yeah. Shane says I'll go to 2 places debating on what guitar to bring with me to test them out. If you're looking for a clean sound, Shane, I wouldn't necessarily... It's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily bring one amp. I'd probably take something that has single coils in it, and then at the same time maybe another guitar that has humbuckers just to push it a little bit more. Because the amps do sound different when they're being pushed hard with humbucker pickups. Like when I play my Princeton, it does sound different when I'm playing it through my Gibson Les Paul with the humbuckers than when I'm playing it with this. But you can hear the spank and the clarity with the single coils, and I think it does work well with the Princeton. But if you're trying to see how dirty it can get, and maybe you bring a pedal with you, something to push the amp a little bit, bring humbuckers so you can see what it sounds like with a little bit more of a front end push. 2's better than 1. Gene says Fender champs are okay too. And Shane says, often when I go to a gig at a big venue, I actually rent a big amp for the day. Alex says, Tony, do you have any guitars with ebony fingerboards? I would love to get one. There's less and less guitars with ebony these days. I don't think I own any guitars with ebony right now. They used to, used to be able to come out, you used to be able to find them a lot easier than what you can do today. That is a poll question, Stu Pop. Maybe we'll do that for next week. Princeton 64, 65, or 68? Yeah, I've tried various ones. But again, I feel like, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's the placebo effect, though, because I hand wired it myself and I built it from scratch. I do feel like the one I have sounds perfectly good. I don't think it sounds any worse than the ones that you're buying right out of the shop. So I'm not saying it sounds better, but I did change the speaker in there. And now that I have the Alessandro speaker in, I think it sounds better than it did with the Jensen speaker that I originally put in there. Vinny, you make a good point. He says, the only reason I ask is because if you're buying it for home use, make sure you try it at 1 or 2. Some of the choices you mentioned don't sound that great at lower settings. That's actually a good point. But the way I actually work around that is because you lose a lot of the bass at low volumes. A lot of these amplifiers have a sweet spot. Sometimes it's around 4 or 5. Sometimes you don't even play them that loud in the store when you're trying them out because it is kind of loud. And they won't sound good. They won't necessarily speak to you at those lower volumes because you lose a lot of the bass at the lower volumes. You can bring yourself a boost or maybe a small 5-band EQ pedal. And then if you're playing them at lower volumes like that, you can actually compensate for the lack of bass with the EQ pedal, But it's true that you don't really know how good an amp sounds until you play it in its sweet spot. And some amps, the sweet spot is just too loud, even for home use. Like definitely when I play this in its sweet spot and I'm using my Apple Watch, it tells me I'm in a loud environment and I could be experiencing ear damage. That's how loud it's got to be. DMAX says the 65 Princetons, at least the reissues, are supposedly better built from what I've heard. I can't really comment on that. I don't know in terms of quality, how much of a difference there would be between the old ones and the new ones. Not sure. Shane says, I find Rolands to be very underrated, great clean amps. They are. There's nothing wrong with Rolands for cleans. Again, it's just a question of whether or not you like the tube sound or the transistor sound. The jazz choruses, for example, they sound great for chorus. They sound good for, early 80s music, stuff like that. New age, new wave, all those kind of things. But, when you try and push them to get into dirt territory, they still sound like transistor amps. Dude, if you like Roland the best, go with Roland, man. If it speaks to you. My Logify says, Tony, have you seen the new bomb guitars, SG shaped? They're like 700 to 1,000 euros with P90s. No, I haven't. Are those guitars that are only issued overseas, or can we get those in North America? Bomb Vega Carve. No, I haven't seen them, no. I'll have to check that out. So Paul says, question of the week. Do you want to jump on the question of the week, guys? Let's do it. I think it's time. We're getting there. I've been yapping for an hour and a half. So let's jump into the question of the week and see where we are in the polls. If you guys don't know about this, I usually put a question of the week online before the live events weekly. And today we had a question which was not a difficult question, I don't think. We had 105 votes on the poll question so far. You can still squeeze in a vote before we start talking about it. But basically it was a simple question that said, what's your psychological limit for owning guitar effects pedals? And the reason I brought that up was because a lot of us have an easy or low psychological limit for owning guitars. Some of us, not all of us. We won't name names, not want anybody to feel bad, including myself, you know, but usually a psychological limit on guitars might be, 3, 2, 4, under 10, let's say, for most of us. However, for pedals, that's not necessarily the same. A lot of us will gladly spend more on pedals just because we can, because they're typically not as expensive. It's not the end of the world. We don't have to really worry about it being a super expensive purchase. You can usually get pedals used for not too much money. So a lot of us will go haywire and we'll end up buying more pedals than we use or need. So I wanted to know where you guys stand on that and where you guys fit in. So the question was, what is your psychological limit for owning guitar effects pedals? And we have 5 possible choices. So just 1 or 2 essentials was one of the options. I like to keep it simple. 3 to 5, enough to cover a variety of sounds, was another option. 6 to 10, I need options, but I don't want to go overboard. 11 to 20, I'm all about versatility and experimentation. Or 21 plus, I can never have too many pedals. So I'd like to hear where you guys fit in, and I'll tell you what the results say. So far, from what I see right now, I'll just do a quick refresh to see if anybody else voted while we were waiting here. 1 second, let me just do this. Yeah, there was another person that casted a vote. And I'll go in order of winning votes. So the most popular vote here was 3 to 5 pedals, enough to cover a variety of sounds. I'm glad to hear that. It seems like a lot of people here are sane and will limit themselves to 5, which I think is good. You're not even maximizing all of the outputs on your power supply for your pedal board. Usually there's about 8 slots, to go into pedals. So that's 5 is good. 3 to 5, you basically have the essentials. So that's the most popular. The second most popular, and we do have a tie, is between 6 to 10. So I need options, but I don't go overboard. And 21 plus, I can never have too many. So 20% of you voted one of each of those answers there. So some of you are going a little bit more, you're a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, adventurous when it comes to buying pedals with 6 to 10. And then there's the people that are nuts like me, probably, that I have more than 21 pedals lying around someplace, which could be a problem. And I'm surprised to see that the 1 to 2, and people like to keep it simple, is 18%. That's the next most popular answer. And the lowest votes went with people looking at owning 11 to 20 pedals. I don't know why 11 to 20 is not as popular as 21 plus, but it isn't. So that's good to see that I'm not the only one in the psycho category here. Don't mean to be rude if anybody doesn't already know they got issues, but if you have more than 21 pedals, we have issues. We need to talk. And there was a couple of interesting responses here. And somebody says, my theory, pedals replicate the childhood buzz addiction of amassing dinky slash corgi slash matchbox cars, hand wired into our brains when we were little kids. Think about it. Similar hand-sized metal collectibles in the same kind of desirable cardboard box retail packaging. Actually, what's remaining of my 1960s car collection would now pay for a very nice guitar, or even more pedals. I didn't think of it that way, but that's actually a pretty good point. You're right, if I think about it. I used to collect those little cars. Didn't have many, but some of my friends had a whole bunch, and it's true, all different colors. Some of them with, you have the sparkle colors, candy apples, and all those other colors. So yeah, I can see where having a bunch of having a bunch of these guys lying around could remind you of that. Yeah, I get it. And Vinny's World says owning no limit, using / putting on a pedal board probably 5 to 7 max before the tap dancing routine becomes a bit too complex. That's the thing. You do have to have a somewhat of a balance, right? You can only put 8 pedals on a pedal board unless you go mega size, and that's not convenient. Plus, at that point, you're dealing with noise issues. You're probably doubling up on a couple of different pedals that you don't really need. So I think it's great to be able to slim it down there. But it's true, I do tend to own more pedals than I actually end up using on my board. My board hasn't changed all that much in all these years, and it's basically about 8 pedals. And I'll swap maybe 2 of those pedals relatively frequently, not more than that. But I like to experiment. Kind of like you, Mississippi Blues. He says, I have 40 plus pedals. I like to experiment. I think we're all in the same boat. Nobody wants to miss out on cool tone, right? Well, that's the thing that keeps us going with all these pedals. Even though you might have a really good drive pedal or a really good reverb pedal or delay pedal, we're always wondering, what am I missing? Maybe there's something better. It's the hunter in us. We're hardwired as males, mostly males. There might be females here, but I think I'm safe. I'm safe if I say that there's probably no females here in the chat today. But basically, as males, we're probably hardwired, being hunters. We're always looking for something more, something else, something better, something bigger. So I think that's what it boils down to. You can have hundreds of pedals. You're still gonna buy more. I don't think there's a limit. I'm pretty sure there isn't. If you can control yourself at 4 or 5, congratulations. I don't know how to do that. Shane says, Tony, what's your favorite line of budget pedals? That's a hard question, Shane. There's so many lines of budget pedals out there today. I don't know if I have a favorite, to be honest, because I think that sometimes there'll be times at which companies will put out stuff, and they could be hit and miss. There could be like a period where they put out really good stuff, and it could have been preceded by a period where the stuff wasn't that good. Maybe it wasn't built as well or didn't have enough Q and just the quality control wasn't there. For me, when I think budget, the ones that I have the most of, and if I look around here, there's Nuex. They make pretty good stuff. Joyo, I've always found that they made some decent pedals. Donner, I do have quite a few Donner pedals here, Joyo pedals, Nuex, as I said. There's a lot. There's Moval, although I haven't been as impressed with Moval, I gotta say. There's a Demon. There's quite a few, but they're not all great. Out of the bunch, you might find 1 or 2 that really sounds good, and then others are not so good. So when I say favorite line, I'm not talking about like all their stuff. you really have to be selective in terms of what sounds good. What are you guys looking at pedals? What kind of brands do you guys stick with? I mean, for me, I'm not really I don't really have that much brand loyalty because I feel like I don't really necessarily bond with all the pedals that a brand will put out. Like I really like the Wampler stuff. I like Wampler. I like the brand. And I do have a few, but I don't buy all of their pedals because I don't really resonate. They don't all resonate with me. I have to say that I don't own, and I used to be a fan, and I think I still am a fan, but I haven't purchased a Boss pedal in a long time. Although they make great stuff. They're solid, they're great, they last a long time. I just haven't purchased a Boss pedal in a long time for whatever reason. I like MXR2. Right now, I think I might have one MXR pedal. I used to have a whole series. I showed you the picture of my collection when I was younger, and I used to have all of them. But I haven't purchased an MXR pedal in a long time. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variety, and it's a good thing, I think. You should do a video on pedals you recommend. Well, I intend to do some kind of video on most of my pedals. There'll be a lot. I mean, just looking on my desk here, I got my Keeley compressor, I got my MXR Univibe, I got the Wampler Pinnacle right over here. I got some Keyline pedals. What else do I have here? I got a couple of, well, the one I showed you earlier from TC Electronic, Joyo Delay. This is a really good one I've had for a long time. It basically mimics the MXR. Very inexpensive. It's lasted a long time. Never got rid of it. Full Tone, another great brand. You know, got one of these. NuX, as I said. What else? I'm looking at my pedal board. They're mostly TC Electronic pedals with a few different ones. Mojo Hand Rook. There's so many, man. My Logify says, Tony, you need a BEOD Friedman if overdrive needed anytime. I have one. I have one here somewhere. Not one of my favorites. I bought it thinking I'd enjoy it more than I do. And it's not as good as I thought it was. At least for the sounds I'm looking for. I'm just trying to see where I put it. It's here somewhere. Shane says, YouTube just gave me a notification that Tony is live now. So everybody's gonna jump in now. That's what's gonna happen, right? Oh man. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you. Farid said, as long as the pedal sounds good and is built to last. Amen to that. You know, if I can get a pedal that's inexpensive and sounds good, I'm all over it, man. The cheaper, the better. I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of money on a pedal. I think you can get good sounding pedals at relatively low cost. It's just a question that everybody sort of jumps on the boutique bandwagon and the prices become expensive until you can get the quantities higher up in terms of production. I don't know how people stay in business either, Eddie. I wouldn't want to be in the pedal business. DMAX says rev pedals are also solid. John said I got the notification at the start of the show. It's weird that people are getting the notification at different times. Interesting. Interesting. Give me, guys, before we leave, just to satisfy my curiosity here, give me give me three pedals that you have on your pedal board or that you play the most right now. I just want to see what kind of pedals you guys are floating around with out there. Just curious. They don't have to be in any particular order, just, you know, whatever you're playing regularly. Shane says, Tony, how big of a player is Fender in the pedal market, do you think? Probably bigger than we think, Shane, because they've been around forever and they're practically in every single store, if you think about it. Let me see here if I can find this. If I can get some information on this. So here I did find something that says Boss launches its iconic compact pedal series with the OD1, blah, blah, blah. Since then, the colorful lineup has been adopted by generations of musicians with over 130 models produced to date and over 18 million units sold. So 18 million units. And if we say that, you know, it's basically what, $100 for the cheapest one, roughly. That'll give you an idea of how much money they've made on these pedals. It's quite substantial. They've been around since what, 1973, over like 50 years. So Gene says reverb delay looper. My Logify says Tube Screamer Mini Phase 90 Script Custom Shop MXR. Cool. Dan says Phase 90. Farid says delay, reverb, and boost. Dan of New Jersey says Baby Blues, Rockbox, King of Tone, and Archer Icon. And Vinny's World says if modeling pedals are included, the HS Stomp, the Tone X, and the MIDI Baby 3. Rexomatic says the old GT3. Shane says I play mostly Zoom, GX4, Boss, Metalcore, and Digitech Drop. Danielle says I rarely use pedals. I avoid the extra weight and setup time associated with pedals. And Eddie says my absolute favorite is the Range Master Treble Booster in the Helix. I love it. And Patrick says my Polara Reverb and EVH Chorus. Nice. You guys have a nice selection of toys to play with there and keep you busy. Randy says MXR Modified Overdrive, Zodic Minico Pressor, and Zoom MS70. And DMX says right now, GHS Morning Glory, Boss Angry Driver, Boss Waltz Delay, GHS 3 Series Reverb, Friedman Dirty Shirley Swamps in and out, also with the Angry Driver. Okay. Nice selection there, man. Well, you know what? It's a lot easier to swap pedals than it is to swap amplifiers and keep us happy. So I think if we ever get a little bit of that, you know, stale feeling where we're not necessarily enjoying the amp or guitar as much as we used to, throwing a new pedal in front of it, in front of your guitar or amp, definitely can make you feel better about it and keep you going until the lull is over. So I like to have that as an option, always at my disposal. And Paul says, pedal, PAL FX, PAL 800 Gold, version 4, best MIAB on the planet. Brown amplification, carbon, a blues breaker, and Soldano made by Soldano. So there you go. And that's true. I mean, if you're looking at getting a sound, for example, if you're a Fender guy and for whatever reason you jump into a Marshall period, you know, you can go out and buy yourself a Marshall, very expensive to do, or you can just get yourself a good, you know, Marshall in a box pedal and scratch that itch, you know, for a couple $100. So it's always great to be able to do that. And if you're playing in a band where you're doing a lot of covers, you can't possibly carry, all the different amplifiers that you would need to be able to cover all the sounds. So pedals make sense. John says he's looking at number 1, the Rowan Dumbler, great overdrive. 2, Game Changer. 3rd, Man Plasma Coil, Crazy Mad Fuzz. And 3, the Moore 90 Orange Phaser. Nice. Very nice. So maybe one day what we'll do is we'll do a whole video on the inexpensive pedals that surprised you. Maybe there's a series of pedals that you've played with over the years that you didn't think you'd like. You bought on a whim, maybe very inexpensively, and it actually surprised you so much that maybe it knocked off one of the boutique pedals on your board. It's happened to me. I'm wondering if it's happened to you. That's something that we might leave for a topic on another show. All right, guys, I think I talked your ear off enough as it is for today. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and I've been talking for almost 2 hours. So I think that's enough for today. Thank you for participating in another live Sunday stream. It's always so much fun. I'm glad and always happy to talk to you guys because you guys know what I'm talking about. We have, similar likes and dislikes, and I think we're all in the same boat as it pertains to gear acquisition and just addiction to gear. So thank you for participating in yet another Sunday stream. I look forward to the next one with you guys. As per usual, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. We are here every Sunday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you missed it in the past and maybe you're just catching this one on a rerun, please write something on your wall, set yourself a reminder, set the alarm clock, whatever. Ask the wife to remind you. Sunday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here. We always have great stuff to talk about, all right? Enjoyed your company. Take care of yourself, everybody. See you next Sunday. Have a great week.